In this episode of the podcast, we're talking to Andrew Funderburg, or as we like to call him, Fundy. Now, Fundy is a friend of mine. He is a former wedding photographer who saw a need for album design software. He actually started up a little kind of Photoshop action, which then turned into a plugin, which then turned into a full-blown software company called Fundy Software. They make album and wall art design software for professional photographers, and they're actually known as the industry leaders in this space. He's done incredibly well in the space of being an entrepreneur. He's had amazing experiences in his life. He is now the podcast host of a running podcast as well. We're going to have a blast chatting through many of our different life experiences, including Andrew's time in Japan, how he came up with the idea for Fundy Software, running, fitness, all the goods. So stay tuned. This is the TSS Podcast. It's a place for authentic conversations to uncover the stupid, simple truths that help us succeed in business, create better relationships, and lead more fulfilling lives. Welcome to Think Stupid Simple. We have a ritual here, Andrew.
Well, nobody told me that I had to bring my Oregon hippie candles for the podcast. You got to tell me that. I would have brought mine.
I'm going to add that to the onboarding email process that we like to light candles before every episode. Okay, my friend, you have a bunch of different things that you do, but you started up a running podcast? What is this?
Yeah, just recently. So I was into running and my cousin's into running. And as you may have noticed, there's a global pandemic.
No, I have not noticed this.
You haven't noticed that? So look it up. Just hit CNN, New York Times, any of those. And my main role in the software company is traveling to shows and networking and going to visit our ambassadors and do filming and stuff. And I haven't been able to do that this year. So I have the odd problem of I don't really have a lot of work to do. So I was kind of going stir crazy a little bit. And so I talked to my cousin. I said, hey, let's start a podcast. My cousin and I grew up kind of like brothers. And so we just laugh and have fun the whole time.
And can you pull it up, Anthony? I want to. Yeah, this is the #1 running podcast for lifelong runners. So you guys are like number 10 in the. What does that involve? Like being number 10 for running podcasts. How many listeners do you guys have?
We have a bunch of listeners. So if you go to, we're not number 10 right now, but we've dipped into the top 10 weekly a few times for running podcasts on Apple Podcasts, which is pretty cool. We just started in August and we didn't think that would happen. I was just kind of checking. I actually got an email from one of those stat companies, be like, hey, look what you did. Do you want to sign up for our membership to track your stuff? Which I haven't, but yeah, we hit top 10. So that's pretty cool. We've had a lot of really famous guests on.
That's rad. I feel like you need a certain level of crazy just to run, but then to actually talk about running, you're like ratcheting up the crazy.
So I thought I was crazy, but we have talked to some really crazy people. I've talked to 70-year-olds who have got a new full marathon PR by 30 minutes in their 70s.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can help me to understand this. This is obviously a long form podcast, so we have plenty of time to talk about any and everything. But I have tried running, not just a few times. I mean, I've tried it for years at a time. Yeah. And I still despise it, like to its core. Like I just do not like it.
That's fair. What's the furthest you've run when you were running?
Maybe 10 miles.
Yeah, you should have been there. Maybe you just hate running.
I mean, I eventually got to the place where I did hit a runner's high. But funny enough, like I've gotten into cycling over the past year, and I do really enjoy cycling, and I can be on my bike and I can cycle 50 miles and be fine. But I don't know what it is about the running thing that just like, it doesn't do for me. And I'm not sure if
maybe you just don't like it.
That could be it.
Maybe you just don't like it.
So do you truly enjoy it?
Yeah.
This sounds.
So one of the things is that most people run too fast.
I've heard this. I've heard that. So they're
just trying to, especially maybe competitive people. which you may know somebody that's competitive. You might have seen him in the mirror before.
Well, and my business partner, who is 10x more competitive than myself,
Yeah.
who
So
I'm always, trying to keep up
maybe
with
you're
him.
just running too fast.
I think that's
Because
definitely
running too fast really sucks.
Yeah, that was one thing that I did not learn about until just this year, that like if you are getting into running, you're supposed to like go 4 or 5 miles an hour until you're essentially getting the entire form and technique down and giving your body time to adjust and everything, which I never did.
You're supposed to run 500 miles at a slow enough pace that you can carry on a conversation while you jog, which is really slow.
I can
like
never
frustratingly
talk
slow.
when I'm running. Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're running too fast.
Okay, so let's say that I want to try this again, and I'm going to try it the right way. How would I begin?
So it kind of depends on your fitness. Oddly enough, I just got certified as a run coach last week. So it really depends on your fitness. So if your fitness is good enough, you really want to start off with running 20 to 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week at that conversation pace.
Conversation pace. What would the heart rate be? Like 130, 140 at that pace?
Obviously, everybody's a little bit different, but like 130.
130. Okay.
Yeah. So slow.
Like 20, 30 minutes. Yeah.
Slow.
Okay.
Conversation pace. And then start on the weekend, start making one of those a little bit longer. And then do that until your fitness, until you feel really, really good. And then add 1 day a week at kind of a fast, like a race pace. Like let's say you're doing a 10K or a half marathon.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and then you just do that and then you kind of keep build. But you want to really do that for like a year.
Yeah,
before you really start working on speed work.
I might just hire you to help me with the other thing that was difficult was trying to figure out whether my form was right, because like running is one of those things where I found you really have to mind the details. I mean, every in a mile, how many hundreds of steps do you take? And little tiny things in your shoes, you end up feeling by like 3 miles in, 4 miles in, like just these aches and pains.
Yeah.
At least I would.
The key is to get the right shoes. If you don't have the right shoes, you're going to hurt yourself. Really, especially at our age.
Yeah.
But as far as form and stuff, there's actually a lot of research that points to obviously fundamental things where you might injure yourself. You want to change, but you don't really worry about form too much. Everybody's a little bit different. Yeah.
Really? So whether you're heel striking, toe striking, mid foot strike, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you want to run the best form you can for yourself, but Meb, who won the Boston Marathon at 39 with a new PR, is a heel striker.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he's going to run faster than we ever will. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to say this. If you'll try jiu-jitsu.
So maybe I have a bad neck. I hurt my neck boxing a few years ago. And
don't do jiu-jitsu then.
Yeah, probably not the best decision for me.
Yeah, you could do like a lot of neck strengthening stuff, but then neck strengthening is like necessary for jiu-jitsu without an injury though. So like I don't want to encourage you to do that.
Yeah, right? I was boxing with someone that was a little bit bigger than me, and I was ducking a punch, and he slipped. It was just an accident, and came down full weight on the back of my head, and my neck kind of popped. And if every once in a while I aggravate it, and it's not good.
That's not good.
Yeah, because you want range of motion in your neck. That's a plus.
Yeah, and in jiu-jitsu, so much of the attacks and everything, and if you're a white belt, you're getting destroyed all day long. So much of the attacks are based around the neck and chokes and all the different things that you're doing. So I can imagine that might not be great for you. I actually got one of my buddies. He was on the podcast. My friend Clark, another software guy actually, and I got him to roll with me in jiu-jitsu, and I was very, very careful. But he was like, I want to give this a shot. And he told me that he had like a fused disc in his back, and he thought he'd be okay doing it. But I did a sweep on him very slowly. It's kind of swept him and brought him over the side. And as soon as he kind of hit the mat, he was like, "Oh, I'm done." And I was like, "Oh no!" I felt so bad.
Yeah,
But yeah,
you gotta be careful with that.
yeah, spine and neck
But
stuff is
for
brutal.
but for me, running is part of my key to connect everything else. So I'm a big believer in a holistic approach to life,
Yeah.
including business. And my current area of interest is blue zones. So my goal is to make it to 100, healthily make it to 100 years old.
Okay. What is blue zones?
So, you don't know about blue zones?
No, tell me.
Okay. Okay. Well, go order the book and read it. So blue zones are, I believe it's 6 regions. It might be 7 regions throughout the world where there is
Oh, I
an
have heard of
enormously
this.
higher percentage of centarians living
Yes,
there.
yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
Okinawa, not all of Okinawa, but one island cluster in Okinawa, Japan. There's one in Greece. There's one in Sardinia, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Loma Linda, California is the only one in the
Interesting.
U.S. So that's kind of interesting for me. So
And the
how
book is
can we?
called Blue Zones?
Yep, the book's called
Okay.
Blue Zones, and so I'm a big um, skeptic with fad diets, powdered drinks, you
Mm-hmm.
know, athletic greens, or that's like the
I'm
cool
with you
one
on
right
that.
now.
I'm
I'm
with
a
you.
big doubter of those. So what I love about Blue Zones is basically this scientist said, okay, we know all of these places where more people live to 100 than
Mm-hmm.
anywhere else. Let's just backward engineer the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's done that and has baked it out to 9 principles of longevity.
Okay. This is a must-read book that I'm gonna have to go pick up.
Yeah.
There's a
So yeah.
there's a place in China that had one of those blue zones that I don't know if it was one that was in the book, but there was a place
Yeah.
that I actually visited. It was
Mm-hmm.
a mountainous village that we went and you kind of have to like hike into.
Yeah.
Just absolutely incredible. But they had it was so odd. You could actually visit the what are they called? Centennials? The
Centarians.
centurions. They
Yeah.
had like 5 of them on display, like living people. And it's like a
And they were
tour
like,
and you
hey,
can
how you
like go
doing?
and yeah, you can go and like watch them live and they're like 110 years old.
Yeah.
It was kind of wild, but yeah, the principles have to be I would imagine you can learn so much by looking at what these people eat and I guarantee what they eat is not what kind of Western traditional fitness would
No,
dictate.
no. But that's just one kind of part of it,
Yeah.
different things like in Okinawa, most people will, except for Loma Linda, most of the cultures they will get together and have like a glass or 2 of wine with each other between like 3 and 5 and basically gossip. And that community of friends and just having a couple of glasses of wine is
And
one
just
key
talk some
factor
shit.
also. Yeah,
Just like talk some shit, get it off your chest.
exactly.
Like
Exactly.
don't take that stuff to bed, man.
I know. Frickin', do you see Betty over there acting like she owns the place?
Dude, there is something tangible though about holding on to negative emotions. Like I've
Oh yeah.
seen for my own father at times has held on to these feelings that, these people that have done him wrong in his life and
Mhm.
you can physically see the result on his face,
Yeah.
on his body, on the way that he carries himself.
Mhm.
Like so like while it's funny that they get together and gossip, I can see that some sort of like therapy, some sort of like communication, getting things out has to be so critical to living to 100 years old.
Yeah. And that's one thing that's kind of crushing us right now during this pandemic is that there's been so much focus in the last few years on how important it is for humans to be around each other because we've kind of gotten sucked into our devices so much. And I feel like there was this movement, this big break to like get off of our devices and meet our neighbors and hang out. And then now they're like, oh
Yeah.
wait, not yet.
Oh wait,
just wait a
now
little bit.
school is 8 hours facing a screen. Like that I don't know how that can possibly be healthy for our children. But
It's not.
one of the,
Like
one
everybody
of the
knows it's not, but we're just like, what are our options right now?
so what is the one thing? I mean, I don't want to minimize or understate the pandemic and its effects, but
Yeah.
if there was one piece of everyday life that you could, we joked around that you could pay
Mhm.
$1,000 for, what would it
Yeah.
be?
Um, Probably that. Probably I would pay $1,000 to be able to get like a free pass every day for an hour and a half to meet up with some friends and have a beer.
That would get
Like
very
if there's
expensive
this
very quickly.
magical, like,
You're going to pay $1,000
oh,
every day,
well, I
or a
thought I
thousand
could
bucks
pay a
for the
thousand
one-time pass.
dollars for the everyday.
Okay. The
Okay.
everyday pass. Okay.
And I know that's asking a lot, but it's an hour and a half every day. Maybe $1,000 a month.
Okay. That's
I would go.
fair.
$1,000 a day would probably get a little bit cost prohibitive. But at this point, man, I'd give $1,000 for a weekend, maybe. Those you have those mental health days where you're like, "Whew, this is a tough one."
No, I feel you, dude. My $1,000 a month thing would be jujitsu. Like,
Yeah.
I did not realize I didn't realize how much of my emotional health relied on that time that I spent. And I was probably in the gym 5 times a week doing jujitsu,
Yeah.
and then in my off days, you mentioned like how you kind of live life around certain things, right? For you, running is probably like your inspiration for food, for the way that you schedule your day, the types of workouts that you do. Would you say that that's your
It's definitely one of the anchors.
okay?
You want to call it that. And you probably miss jujitsu not just from the physical act, but the being around the other guys, the other people doing it, that camaraderie, etc. And we've been lucky. I have a core group of 3 or 4 guys, and we meet once a week outside, and then we kind of run near each other, not with each other.
Yeah.
And then my cousin has a business that has like a big parking lot, and then sometimes we'll sit outside and drink a beer in a giant circle.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful that my sport of choice, I don't have to be that close to somebody, because that's
Jiu-jitsu is quite possibly the greatest way of transmitting COVID that ever existed.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it was taken away, and you're right that a big part of it is the social aspect of it. But then I started doing some studying on it, and there's this weird, and it sounds odd to describe, but like the physical touch, even when it's with another man, is a very necessary thing. And guys will never be like, I need to be held, or I need to physical touch and whatever, except for with your wives and with your partners, whatever. But in a martial arts format, it's permitted and allowed. And there's so much like to that human connection, but then also I have ADHD. So like for an hour and a half, just being focused on technique and technical, like, where you're burning yourself out energy wise. So you're kind of taking out all your frustrations, but then you're just dialed into this technique, and then you remove it. And I kid you not, during the first 2-3 months of the pandemic, I had a few moments of like mental breakdown. Like I was doing weird stuff. Like I was getting involved in like weird conversations online. And at one point my partner's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. And I eventually figured out like, okay, you've taken out the piece of my mental health that was like my anchor.
Yeah.
It was wild, man.
Yeah, no, it's humans are supposed to touch other humans. Like there's physical and mental benefits from that.
Yeah.
That's why you take people who've been removed from society for some reason, and they go crazy.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. We're really interesting and complex creatures, man, between needing space but then also requiring touch and like everything in between. It kind of blows my mind at times.
Yeah, it's funny because we are extremely complex creatures. Like, for example, you've probably done the same. If you're reading about nutrition or exercise, and you read all of these complex things, like, have you read that book, How Not to Die?
No, these are, I'm going to jot down some of these books that so Blue Zones is one, How Not to Die.
Yeah, How Not to Die. I forget the name of the author. He's a doctor, researcher, awesome dude. He's the same guy that's in charge of nutritionalfacts.org.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen that, but basically it's like one chapter is how not to die from heart disease. Next chapter is like how not to die from diabetes. And so he goes into all of the science of this, and it's extremely complex, all of the nutrients and everything that you need. But he says, it's very complex. And if you try to think it through of everything that you need to eat, like you're going to go crazy. But if you just eat a lot of plants and a little bit of seafood, you get everything you need. So,
I like simplicity.
We are complex individuals, but at the end of the day, we just need to, eat good food, keep our bodies moving, and be around people that we like.
Interesting. I would agree with
right?
that.
That's about it.
Yeah.
We can sprinkle in some other stuff. You got to sprinkle in skydiving.
I really want to go skydiving. I saw that you've gone twice now. How many times have you been?
3 times.
3 times. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those. And you have kids, so you got the wifey and the kids to buy off on this, huh?
Well, the kids are grown now, and I have pretty good life insurance policies, so everybody seems to be okay with it at this juncture.
You've done your influence at this point. They are who they are at this point.
I've got very little input.
No, I want to go skydiving very much so. That is one of the things that I almost feel like I'm a little bit worried about doing it because I know myself and when I find something like that, I have a tendency to like I know I would love it so much that I would just want to go every weekend. Like I would get totally lost in it.
So I have researched becoming like a certified skydiver, so you can go on your own and like go whenever you want. But I don't know. I know I would love it, but I don't know if that's something I want to actually let myself do.
Yeah. No, I feel like it'll be the same as, so I got into high performance driving and then teaching high performance driving. And it was like, it was an addiction. And the problem with it is like, it's not like a video game. It's not like jiu-jitsu where you go for an hour and a half. Every time you go racing, you spend the day before prepping your car, might be even more time prepping your car. Then you spend the entire day getting the car out to the track, racing, and then getting the car back. And then the next day you're recovering. Like it's basically a whole weekend is shot each time you go.
Yeah.
And I would go like twice a month. So it's like, for a family person, it becomes
not the best
idea.
But the thing that is awesome about skydiving, have you ever seen the Will Smith video on skydiving?
No.
It's like a 6-minute YouTube video or something. You should check it out. But the quote from him was everything. What was it? Everything in life worth doing is on the other side of fear.
Yeah. I remember that quote that he has. Yeah. I didn't know that was regarding skydiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the quote is something that I feel, at this point, I feel like I only want to do the things that make me uncomfortable. Things that kind of rely outside of what's easy and what's, outside of a comfort zone.
Do you have this feeling? I was talking with another business colleague, one of our marketing consultant that we use, and she's kind of in the same position where her kids are just leaving home. And we were like, man, once we're back to normal, like all of the shit that I've wanted to do and have been putting off, like everything's on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No holding back.
My kids are still pretty young. My oldest is 10. So they still require quite a bit of time. We actually just had a newborn too. So we kind of restarted the clock on that.
I don't mean to laugh at you, but I am.
Oh no, it is laughable that at 40 years old last night I was up with the baby and and then here at the studio with
that's a marathon. Babies are a marathon, man, not a sprint. You just gotta out sleep them or out, stay awake or whatever. Like it's just, you do what you can to get through.
Dude, I don't know how the ladies do it. Like when I look at Yen is just like there's something else. There's a strength in women that is just unmatched when it comes to this, because I'm sitting here complaining about being tired and stuff. She'll go days without sleeping and just like go.
Yeah.
Like I gotta work, I gotta do it, I gotta do this. And I'm like, I have a headache. Like, let me sleep.
Yeah. Something interesting about women is that as, for example, in ultra running, as the runs get longer and longer, women are starting to outperform men.
That's interesting. And
But
that
they have to
somehow
be
makes
long,
sense. Yeah.
like 150, 200 miles.
Those are
there's this one crazy race that they just had. They have once a year. It's this crazy guy out in Tennessee who lives on like no, it's Barkley Marathons.
Barkley
I don't know if you heard
Marathons.
that one. So imagine Leadville, but 10 times crazier. But he has this other race called Big's Backyard, and he has basically a 4-mile-ish course on his property that goes around his house. He lives out in farmland or whatever. And everybody starts at the same time, and you have 1 hour to run 4 miles, which isn't that hard.
That's not too crazy.
And so you run the 4 miles, but then every hour you have to run 4 miles.
For how many hours?
Until the last person gives up. Wow. Last man standing.
So how long do these guys go for?
It was a woman that won, Courtney Dauwalter, and I believe she did she go over 48 hours? Like, it's like a couple days.
If you went 48 hours, then you're essentially doing close to 200 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. With no sleep, right? You're just catching cat naps in between.
I don't even understand the level of, one of the things that's so difficult I know nutrition from a standpoint of like general fitness, but one of the things that I've had to learn in cycling is active nutrition. This is like a completely new area for me. And I've been on 50-mile rides where like by mile 40, my muscles will start seizing up because I'm not properly like fueling myself. Yeah. What the hell are people doing over 48 hours? How are they keeping their body
going? You have
going?
to keep fueling, but the reason women can go longer is they have bigger fat reserves. And so, there's a point where your body has to start burning fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the research is that women are better at switching to burning fat compared to men at those longer distances. And they just have per pound of body weight, they just have a higher percentage of fat, so they can burn it longer. Interesting.
I wonder if it's also helpful in like lubricating the joints as well and keeping.
Maybe, and then just women are, built for endurance, with childbearing and,
it's
everything.
It's oddly not surprising.
Cool stuff. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What a fun.
Don't challenge a woman to 200-mile trail race.
Dude, I wouldn't challenge to a 200-foot race, let alone 200 miles. But this is kind of, one of the things that I love about this podcast and about having a platform like this is oftentimes I feel like as a society, we talked earlier about like kind of wanting simplicity and things, but too often we want things to be too simple, and we kind of like put each other into these very kind of, square holes that we expect each other to like fit into. Mm-hmm. Like, Andrew, you are a photographer, or Andrew, you are now a software person, and Andrew, you are now this, and we expect each other to kind of like stay within these. I don't know what it is. It's like in these boundaries that we assign to each other.
Yeah, and I feel like that's gotten worse with social media, and I think we see that in a very bad sense of the way with politics, right? We most people that you talk to have very complex views on how society or government should operate.
Absolutely.
Sometimes, maybe in one instance they have quote unquote a very conservative view, but on another instance they have more of a liberal view. And I think that we have done a big disservice to society by kind of drawing this line, and everybody's either this or this.
Yeah, social media definitely has amplified it. I mean, you hear the way that we teach on how to grow something is you have to niche down into one thing, and you got to show people that one thing every single day, and it's got to be consistent, and they have to come to know that this is your brand. And it got to a point for me where I was like, I am so much more than a photographer.
Yeah. Well, it's exhausting.
It is.
Like mentally and emotionally, it's just exhausting.
So what you have created is more than impressive as a photographer, but then going into software and design and creating Fundy Software, and which is now the leading platform for album design and IPS among professional photographers. But it's so nice to hear you speak about these other things that you are also very proficient at, like running, for example. So it's fun to have a platform for that. But tell me for a second about Fundy Software. How is everything going? How is everything doing?
Everything has been going really well, oddly enough. We've had a really good year because what we've seen, and you've probably heard from photographers, is, people are shooting a lot less and sometimes not shooting at all, depending on where they live. And our piece of software is something that allowed them to generate a lot of revenue through increasing their, album sales, wall art, et cetera, through their clients, so that maybe they've been shooting less, but actually there's a studio right next to us, and one of a local photographer uses our software, and she's actually had the best financial year she's had ever.
Interesting. Anthony, can you pull up the Fundy Software website? So basically, what this software does, if you don't know about the software, maybe you're not in photography, is essentially you have simplified the process of not only album design. Maybe pull up. Is this the homepage?
No, hit the logo on the top left, and then you can kind of go through the homepage. There's a little carousel up top.
There we go. There we go. So yeah, not only does this kind of automate the entire design process, but then you also have this wall art process for basically in-person sales of, like, portraits that you would hang up in your home and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you're saying that people are selling more in 2020 than they had previously?
I've talked to a number of people that have had one of their best financial years, or a better financial year than last year, even though they were shooting a lot less. For some people, that meant, wedding photographers, for example, that have been in business 10 or 15 years, and they went back to every single one of their clients that never ordered an album or wall art from their sessions, and contacted them and did all of that. Since everybody was at home, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, sat on Zoom all day, every day, and just were selling albums and wall art.
Wow.
And then, a number of people that were wedding photographers and quickly shifted to family and or, engagement / elopement photos, and were shooting these small events, but then, selling bigger albums or wall art off of that. Because
so
a lot of these people that were still getting married, they had a lot of extra money because they didn't have to cater for 100 people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, if you are, so I don't know that we've even talked about this really yet on the podcast, but from the wedding and event side, half of our business with Lineagers of Photography was weddings and events. And these are major events, people throwing in hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars to throw these extravagant events, which in 2020 was completely just decimated.
Yeah.
Like it's non-existent now, like this entire... Just like every other event space, from concerts to, to live sporting events to everything. But for the studio portrait photographer, it seems like that area, definitely that area has come back quicker because you're able to work with one family at a time. You're able to maintain a distance. It's controlled settings, controlled environments. So that side would make sense to me, how you could get people into the studio and then be able to sell to them prints and whatnot.
And, one thing also is that, I mean, we're a global company, so not only is every country different, but every state has been different. While there have been no weddings in California, in the Midwest, there were weddings with 50 to 100 people
Isn't it wild? Isn't it
happening.
wild how
Yeah,
every state is almost like its own country at this point? Like,
yeah, yeah. And it's, I just from a purely scientific standpoint, I'm I can't wait to sit down and look at all of the science and studies after the fact. So, you take California, which has been very proactive with masks and shutting down everything, but just, one of the top states with COVID deaths,
just crushed.
and then you have, a state like Florida, who, from what I can see, has been very lackadaisical in everything,
Yeah,
and has much lower transmission rates and death. And so, I think a lot of it is family and work social structures,
for sure.
are different. I think that's where it's going to come. I don't want to say that don't wear masks and do whatever you want. That's not the takeaway here. I think that we're going to learn a lot about how different aspects of the society live within our country, and how those aspects of society, maybe either prevented spread or accelerated spread, depending on how things were.
Yeah, it's been wild to say the least, just to look at the different responses that we've seen, not only across the different states, but then amongst our political leaders. I mean, this has been one of probably the only events that I can think of in history where the clear hypocrisy was made so, like, it was just so point blank in front of your face. Like, people saying to do one thing, but then doing completely something else on their own
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
But going back to wedding photography, I know that you're not, you are a CEO and of a software company. Your professional days are behind, but you still have professional photography days are behind you, but you still have a huge foot in this industry and you understand what's going on. What is your take on weddings and events? How long do you personally feel like it's going to be before things are back to where they were before?
Well, so my personal opinion is that this is going to be a transition year. Um, so much is going to depend on the vaccine rollout.
Hmm.
I I feel pretty confident. Humans are really good at figuring out how to fix a problem. Like
Hmm.
that's really what we're built for. That's why we aren't hanging from trees right now. We're like we love finding solutions to problems. And
Yeah.
the vaccine rollout has been a bit bumpy, to say the
Yep.
least. But I feel pretty confident that human ingenuity is going to solve this problem pretty quickly. And I feel like most of the people that want to have the vaccine are going to have the vaccine before June hits. So I
Hmm.
feel pretty confident this is going to be a pretty good summer for events and weddings, and big, and an awesome summer for restaurants and bars. Like, everybody cannot wait to leave their house and go spend money,
This is true.
right?
To me,
So once those floodgates open, man, it's going to be the roaring 20s. I
yeah,
don't,
there's,
but I think people are still going to be cautious, right? So it's not going to be like we're going to go back to, you know, 2019 in a snap.
yeah, yeah,
I think 2022 is going to be an incredible summer across the board for weddings and events, and you know Disneyland and all of those things. But I do think 2021 is going to be a good solid year.
yeah. I feel like there's a lot of people that it was very interesting, back in April when kind of we knew that this thing was serious and we were like, okay, we're hunkered down. We got to figure out what's going on. There was a lot of prominent people in the photography industry that were straight up jumping ship. Like weddings and events are done. This is over. This is, not coming back. And they were completely pivoting away entirely.
Mhm.
And then there was a lot of people that were like, this is going to be just a couple months. And we kind of landed, I remember Justin actually put up a post that said he related this to POW stories where, you know, the survivors of prisoners of war, they generally were the ones that had hope, but they had no definite date in mind. They just had hope that they were going to survive, but there was no specific date. And the ones that kind of thought this is going to be 3 months, they eventually lost their will and kind of gave up. Yeah. And he said, don't put this specific date. So we were prepared for this to kind of be a long haul type thing. At the same time, I do feel like you said, 2021, I think is going to be one of those years where for 2020, most photographers that do events and weddings, we had all these deferrals. You know, all of our weddings are deferred, and we gave people the ability to reschedule into 2021. I think we're going to get a lot of those, which means that a huge chunk of the revenue is already paid. Half of that is already paid and collected. The other half is to be paid and collected, but it's going to sit on dates that you would normally book new clients for. Yeah. So while I see it as being like an okay year, I see 2021 as being like another recovery year. Like, let's try and make things work. And then 2022 I see as optimistic, but I also feel like there's going to be I think everything will be back to normal, but I also think there's going to be a mindset shift in large events. Yeah.
There's going to be some PTSD.
Exactly.
There's going to be a lot of people that just get freaked out being around lots of
people. Exactly. And that's the piece that I worry about.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things, thankfully, for photographers is you're not a caterer, right? So being a photographer, you're being booked for the event. And ultimately, it doesn't matter that much if 50 people show up or 150 people show up.
Yeah.
It's not going to affect the photographer's revenue.
Very true.
That much, right?
Compared to a caterer that's per head.
Compared to a caterer that's per head. So that's going to be really tough. So thankfully, we're in the photography industry, and you're going to be booked either way. Also, I think psychologically, going through this, and you've probably seen this among your own friends, is that, and we joked around this a little bit, but I feel like one thing that society has learned through this pandemic is that we are going to place a much larger importance on our family and friends going forward than maybe we had in the past. And I think photography is something that speaks to that.
That is a good point. That's a good counter argument to like the argument of not wanting to hold events. Like maybe the remaining PTSD means that the events are going to be smaller, but then maybe they're more frequent. Maybe there's a higher placement on the value of memories from these events. And
maybe instead of 300 people, there's going to be 100 people, but the level of food is going to be much higher. The flowers are going to be more beautiful. They're going to, I want an extra photographer because I want to make sure we capture, Aunt Mildred, and I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah. I'm seeing 2022 as being like an uptick, and I'm seeing 2023 as the year where everyone's comfortable in living again. That's kind of my preparation personally for it, but that's a guess.
So at the very beginning of this, the whole thing, like I've been around long enough that I've been through 9/11 and the housing crisis and stuff, and at the very beginning of this, to all my friends, I just said, stockpile cash, cut your costs. Get as much cash in the bank as you can, because we don't know how long this is going to last.
Yep.
And so I really, what's his name? The founder of Alibaba in China.
He's missing right now, isn't he?
I think so. I forgot about that. So you don't want that. But his message was, your goal this year is to survive.
Yes.
Don't, from a business standpoint. Obviously from a health standpoint too, we want to live, but, so I view 2020 as a survival year. Everybody just do whatever you can, keep your head above water, hopefully not dip into your savings too much if you need to. And I view 2021 for a lot of businesses as the get your head above water.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're going to, restaurants, everybody's going to
agree.
be able to have a good enough year to at least get their head above water, shed some debt,
Yeah.
get back into a good footing. And 2022 is going to be an opportunity year.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I have to say, like, as the photography industry as a whole needs to look at how fortunate we are to be in the positions that we were in. Because we, as a photographer, as a cinematographer, as a creative professional, you're charging a good amount of money for a product that has really not a lot of intrinsic cost to it. It's a largely intellectual piece of product that you are selling, as opposed to being in other industries that are like food service, where the margins are so incredibly low. You're relying on day-to-day foot traffic. The gym industry, where you have, again, incredibly low margins and hundreds of people packed into a closed space. These industries have been rocked so hard to the point where, like, for a photographer, if you had savings, you're good. You just wait a little bit and you get right back to it. But so many of these other businesses have either stopped business, filed for bankruptcy, or figured out how to restructure. Like, it's been brutal.
Well, some of these business, like a restaurant and gyms, just your overhead on your lease. Like, you can't, if you have a physical location, you can't just shut down and wait.
Yeah.
Because you're just shedding cash the whole time.
Yeah, and that was the case where for the gym where I do jiu-jitsu at. I mean, this is a very well established gym.
Yeah.
And yet they're just rocked, like, through this whole thing.
Have they been, so one thing, especially with smaller gyms, maybe not a corporate gym, I know a lot of people that have just kept their subscription even though they're not going and can't go, because they know that if everybody cancels, then their gym won't be there anymore. Have you heard anything?
So I tried to do that. Yeah, I mean, like, I think they had initiatives, in the first 3 months of this. I think everybody was very willing to do exactly that, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of these boutique gyms, I mean, for our whole family does jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So that's me, Yen, plus 3 kids. We were spending about $600 a month for our gym memberships for all of us.
Yeah.
That's not like something that you can just...
That's not tenable, yeah.
No, you can't just be like, okay, we're just going to let this ride even though we can't use it. So a lot of the boutique memberships are, $150 to $200 a month, as opposed to like 24-hour fitness. You're like $20-$30 a month.
That's true. Yeah.
You could potentially let it ride. So it's been rough, man. And where do you live again?
So we live in Beaverton, Oregon. So we're
Beaverton, Oregon.
Quarter of a mile from the Nike campus.
Okay. So in California, a lot of these boutique gyms have just kind of figured out how to kind of fly under the radar and try and survive. And some of them get shut down. Some of them kind of go, and like one of, I'm not going to say any specific names because I don't want anybody to get in trouble. One of the
Gavin Newsom, don't listen.
Yes, I mean, Gavin needs to be in his own group of trouble. On his, like, oh my goodness. But yeah, one of the gyms that I know is a boutique gym, and there was a chiropractor next door, and they basically brought him in to consult with the gym, like consult.
Yeah.
So they're now a chiropractic facility, which is now an essential business. I mean, it's a pretty genius maneuver, but like they basically made every member go and visit the chiropractor that's now in the same premises.
Yeah.
And just finding these very creative ways of staying open, and the members know, like, and it's hundreds of people that go and they all know, like, look, we want this thing to keep going. We need this. We're not going to report anything. Like, we're not going to say anything because it'd be dumb to.
Because that's what it is. Also, side note, because do you fly a lot? Like for a few years, I was just flying a lot. I hate airports. I
I
hate
fly quite a bit.
airplanes. I'm
Yeah,
just like over it. Like it used to be cool. I'm over it.
it's not cool
But
anymore.
you know how they have those massage places in airports.
Yeah.
I really, 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 really want them to have chiropractic places in airports.
That
How
would be,
awesome would it be to get off the plane and just have like a chiropractic adjustment right when you
yeah.
get off? Oh
If they were
man.
good ones, I've had some crappy chiropractors, dude. Like
Yeah.
ones where you're like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. You
don't
don't want
know
that.
if what you did was like should have been done,
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
thing.
Things are worse. Of course, you want it to be good, but yeah, man, a little adjustment right off the plane.
That would be
That's
amazing.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be
I
amazing,
feel like
especially
that's
because
money.
it's kind of like one of those things you could do on the go too. Like a good chiropractic visit is like 10, 15 minutes as opposed to like,
Yeah.
nobody wants to sit in an airport for 45 minutes getting a massage.
Yeah. In and out. Cracky crack on your way.
I want to ask you a question. I want to go back to the world of photography and
Mhm.
let's talk about photographers that might be entering the industry.
Mhm.
We built our business in the worst of the 2009 recession. So,
Mhm.
well, when I say worst of it, 2008 was probably the worst of it, where all the businesses were shutting down. 2009 was the worst of like no spending whatsoever.
Yeah.
That was the year that we jumped into photography, and we were able to
Mhm.
grow, fortunately, every year since then. But I find this to be a wonderful opportunity. 2020, 2021 is an incredible opportunity, I think, for people that are coming into this.
Yeah.
There's something about building your business in a recession that prepares you for
Mhm.
anything. Like
Yeah.
when this whole thing happened, we were like, okay, bat down the hatches, we're good to go, everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah. We've been here
But
before.
yeah, you've been in this industry for 20 years. Is that right? Or how long?
Yeah. Damn it. Yeah. About 20 years.
Okay.
A little
I
less.
want to I want to ask you a question, and I have my own opinion on
I
this, but I
started
want
when
to
I was 12.
start when you're 12. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, come
Just
on.
so everybody knows how old I am.
Start when you're 12 and 20 years. You're only 32 years old. Okay. Somehow your children have grown up and are ready to move out of the house, but okay. You
Yep.
had them when you were 14 years old.
Hey, it happens.
It happens. Okay. So I want to ask this question, which is, in the time that you watch photographers come into the industry, most photographers have about an average life expectancy of about 5 years, which means that the majority are going to kind of wash out and be done within 5 years, and usually that's before they hit any major success. What would you feel like is the biggest failing point in photographers that enter the industry? The biggest failing point that you
Yeah.
see repeatedly over and over.
So, I mean, I think that's interesting. I started my software business in 2008 also,
Hmm.
in April of 2008. And you're right that starting a business in a recession is it's a great education. It
Yeah.
really teaches you how to make the most of your revenues and your dollars that you're spending to
Yeah.
really benefit the business and keep it alive. So, I think for photographers entering the industry, I think it's very similar to a lot of industries that have a medium to low barrier of entry. Let's take, um, I don't know, hairdressers or personal trainers or anything where you yourself are kind of the product.
Yeah.
And if I'm opening a coffee shop, I can just go to the coffee shop. Oh, everybody's charging $4.75 for a latte. I'm charging
Hmm.
$4.75 for a latte or whatever. So I think that one thing is undervaluing yourself and your service. And obviously, that value that you give depends greatly on the quality of your photography. So, I'm not saying that a new photographer can just open shop and start charging the top high-end rates of things. But valuing yourself, which is just hard in general. It's hard for people to value themselves.
Hmm.
People go to counseling for 10 years to be able to learn how to value themselves.
This is true.
Um, And then the next thing is, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and this is the same for many of similar types of businesses, just the failure to see your business separate from yourself and what your business needs, and be realistic about how much revenue a business needs to generate in order to pay yourself a decent salary.
Mm-hmm.
And, in order to do that, you need to have a multifaceted business that is, not only, shooting great photos, but also delivering great products around that, have great marketing that feeds into that, have different styles of photography that feed each other. For example, like, if you have a wedding business, having a boudoir business is a really easy offshoot, because women want to do, they're getting in shape, they're getting in their best physical condition right before their wedding, so they look great in their wedding dress. Well, boom, here's a perfect time to do a boudoir shoot, for example. And then not everybody, but most people who get married 4 or 5 years later have a kid or two, family photography. So creating synergies around your business so that it works for itself, and playing the long game. So, those kids will be high school seniors 10 years down the road. So planning that high school senior photography.
Interesting.
Just really thinking of it as a business, and all of the revenue opportunities around there. For example, if someone is getting married, how easy is it to go to the mother and the father of the bride and say, hey, I know your daughter's getting married next September. I'm shooting their wedding. Once she is married, she's going to start her own family. How about we do a final family photo shoot of you and your family together, because that'll be the last time you guys are together as a nucleus family before she starts her own family.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely one of the things of it sounds like you're like seeing the entire picture as a life cycle, right? Not just looking at this one particular event, but looking at kind of the events that lead up to this, as well as the ones that come after it, is a very simple way of kind of turning one client into a repeat client, as opposed to trying to recapture, every wedding photographers. If that's all you do, you work hard for every single shoot. I mean, you think about commercial photography or commercial cinema or commercial anything. You get one client, that client generally comes back to you 20, 30, 40 times. So you can spend more to acquire the client. You can spend more time on the person. But if you're solely just a wedding photographer, you're spending every bit of time for that one day, that one shoot. Whereas following your system, you could turn this into, engagement, boudoir, wedding, family, then maternity, newborn, then family. I mean, you could turn this into easily 10 different repeat visits.
And, one of the things, when in a previous life, I also got an MBA, and one of the things that they teach you in business school,
I actually thought you meant previous life for just a second. I was like, okay.
Well, previous life, I'm kind of losing track. But one of the things that they teach you is that it's much more expensive to get a new customer than it is to get a current customer to give you more money.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So long as that current customer is happy. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's, if your customers are not happy, then you got other issues.
You got some problems.
You need to take a step back and rethink things.
Yeah. One of the things that I see in the educational side, one of the biggest reasons I feel like any creative professional fails, and I think you hit on this when you said this applies to trainers, this applies to anybody who's working in a direct one-on-one type service where there's a low barrier to entry, where you said the product that you're selling is you. I feel like that is one of the biggest reasons people fail is a failure to recognize what they're actually selling. Photographers, so often they spend years fixated on on the gear, on, the quality of their photograph, on the perfect light, on, just obsessing over these details. And I'm sitting there trying to hammer home this message of like, while you're obsessing over these details that none of your clients can see, they're obsessing over this crappy experience that they're having in the process of working with you. And this experience of like, when you look at a photograph, what you attach to the quality of the image is the experience behind it. I think you taught me this lesson more than anybody. You sat in my studio 5 or 6 years ago.
Good job, remember that? Well, I remember sitting in your studio. I don't remember everything I said, but if it's something good, I will take credit for it.
You can fully take credit for this. It was actually, I believe this was for a Fundy video that I did with you guys, where you said, talk about your favorite photograph, bring your favorite photograph and speak on it. And I did. I brought my favorite photograph. It was a picture of my father and I when I was a little kid, and we were at an air show. It had nothing to do with the quality of the image. I mean, it was a blurry shot. The colors are horrible. Everything about it is not great from a technical standpoint. But the memory was what made it a wonderful photograph. And if whether you're a creative professional, whether you're a photographer, whether you are a cinematographer, a trainer of athletes, if you come to the realization that what you're actually selling is you and the experience you're delivering, then your career path just completely transforms. Like you no longer fixate on these little details. Of course, your product needs to be good, but you instead focus on this experience. And when clients walk away with a great experience, they send you everybody that they know. Yeah. So that to me was one of these things that I felt like I learned from you several years back, and I see people repeating the mistakes over and over and over.
Yeah, and it's only somewhat related, but one of my good friends, Jason Marino, lives in a small town in Arizona, and they sell really big wall art pieces.
Yeah,
and for quite a bit, I think his average sale is like $3,500, $4,000 or something like that for a multi-piece wall art installation in their clients' homes. And when people hear those numbers, a lot of them are, well, my clients wouldn't pay that, or blah, blah, blah. So I think his town is 30,000 people or something like that. It's not a huge town in the middle of Arizona. So no matter where you are, there are people who are willing to invest in their families. And you don't need a lot of people to do that. But what's really key, and people forget about this, is if you start to get clients like that, clients bring their friends and family over, and the first thing they see on the wall is this big thing. They're like, oh, where did you get that? And they're like, oh, Imagine Photography did that for us. Jason Joanne, let me give you the number. And so you get clients that want what you produce. And it's the same with the wedding albums. And, if you're not offering wedding albums, taking a step back and really, even starting this conversation with the blue zones and stuff like that, is I really like to take a giant holistic view of everything that I'm doing all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we take a giant holistic view of, say, just offering wedding albums, is if you're producing beautiful weddings albums for your clients, you're going to get referrals 6 or 7 years down the road from those clients, because
absolutely
the new friend that they made saw their wedding album, like, wow,
yeah,
where'd you get this? I'm getting married too. I want one of those. Yeah. Versus a social media post that is gone in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing when people the purpose of a photograph is sort of lost, right? I mean, we don't create those photographs to sit on a hard drive. We don't create them to enjoy them for a split second on social media and to get a few thousand likes or a few hundred likes or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You create those memories because you want to remember those moments. And then we go and we do exactly what, like, you kind of shouldn't do. Like you bury it.
Yeah.
It's buried somewhere as opposed to like actually being relived. And I think people misunderstand the value of any day I would take 10 of a bride's friends seeing her album over the course of 5 years. That will generate more value than 10,000 likes of her photograph posted to social media. Would you say that that statement is accurate?
Yeah, and I was just thinking something else when we started talking about social media versus an album. One thing that is interesting is that I feel like social media is teaching us to be bad photographers.
It's teaching you to serve what you think is going to be liked.
Yeah, because what gets liked on social media is the big giant epic shot, whatever that
Yeah.
is, top
Yeah.
of the Grand Canyon, on the top of the rock at Yosemite, or,
Yeah.
the sunset or whatever. And it's more often than not, that's not the photo a client will spend money on to put on their wall.
Yeah.
More often than not, it's something that is much more quiet and more meaningful to them. Maybe laughing together, or the family. Like, for example, my family. If I had the choice of a photo of all of us like walking off into the sunset with the epic, perfectly lit shot, or a photo of us genuinely laughing and enjoying each other, I would definitely want the laughing, enjoying each other on the wall versus the big epic sunset photo.
You know what's funny, and I agree with you 100%, 1000%. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Between those two photographs, what if I gave you the option of the photo of you all laughing and enjoying each other versus the other option of just shit hitting the fan and just this moment of craziness where like everything is,
Oh, the
you guys are,
chaos.
yeah, the chaos.
Oh yeah, I've
Which would
lived in
you
the chaos.
take?
Well, I don't have little kids now, but if the little kids, I'd take the chaos. Unless there was actual shit hitting the fan, then I probably wouldn't take that one, because I have been there. We've all had the exploding diaper.
Not actual, but no, this is the funny thing for me is Yen and I, we in normal years, we always plan a lot of road trips, and we love road trips.
Yeah.
And for every road trip that we do, we plan a photo shoot with the kids, and we will get the kids kind of dressed up and go to kind of a fun location and shoot like epic children's portraits, basically of the kids. And the photographs that we always like print, that we always like constantly look at, that we go back to, they're not the ones where everyone's kind of doing what they should and looking to the camera and smiling and laughing together. They're the ones where shit's hitting the fan, like proverbial.
The outtakes,
actually,
right?
literally. Yeah, it's the outtakes. It's the moments where like the kids, we were like, just keep the clothes clean for 5 minutes, and then you turn around, they're already playing in the mud, and you're like, what the F? And in the moment, you're so angry about it. But if you can just capture the photographs, like just forget about being upset, just photograph it. The next day, we look back at those and we're like, those were our favorite shots. Like of everything, those were our favorite moments.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing family photography, you only need one photo of everybody looking at the camera smiling.
Yeah.
Then just chaos is let chaos reign. It'd be better.
But so often photographers, once again, I think in this, forgetting what the actual product is, forgetting what the actual thing is, they put down the camera and try to rally to, we got to create that perfect thing again. We got to get back into this. And they miss out on those perfectly imperfect moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two reasons for that. One is an honest mistake, and one is modern society teaching us the wrong thing. But if we go like when I was younger, film was expensive, camera gear was expensive, and there were only a few people that could take a photo that was in focus and done correctly. So really the only photo you got was the smiling looking at the camera, right? Mm-hmm. Just the whole economics of the whole situation wouldn't lend itself to asking a professional to take chaotic photos for us.
True. Yes.
And then the other side is, the constant curation of life that we see on social media.
It's getting tiresome, isn't it?
It's so, yeah. I mean, we all know. I mean, you know, I mean, to be honest, you and I live very privileged lives.
Yes.
We've been lucky enough to have created companies that, you know, financially support us pretty well. We have happy-ish families that get along. We have the opportunity to travel, go to different countries, jump out of airplanes, and if we worked really hard at it, we could show a very curated, amazing life on social media.
Yeah.
And we both know that that's 2% of our lives.
Yes.
We both know that the majority of our lives is, making oatmeal in the morning for breakfast and, doing our stretches so we don't hurt ourselves and, fighting with our kids and our spouses and, watching TV in the evening. Like for the most part, our lives are pretty boring.
I mean, you've literally spelled out why I created this podcast. This podcast is me wanting to go in the face of all of that, the inauthenticity, the we have to fit, everything into a little caption that gets your attention, that's clickbaity. I can summarize every conversation into a short little title. This curation of life that's it's taking away like every bit of the nuance.
Yeah.
Of what it is.
I just deleted my Instagram account. I've tried a few different times to curate something that was authentic and meaningful, and it's just impossible. I'm out.
Yeah.
Peace out.
It's a very strange thing for sure. And the funny thing is it rewards you for curating the 1%, for feeding Instagram the exact same pretty picture in a different scene and environment, edited the same way, with the same style, with the same everything. Yeah. You're rewarded for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's you've probably seen I built a conversion van. One of my hobbies is I built a RV out of a cargo van.
Ooh.
You haven't seen that?
I have not, and this is actually something that I've been wanting to do. So I'm gonna have to pick your brain on this.
So everybody listening, you can go to YouTube and search Fundy Van Tour on YouTube, and you can see it. I have a roof deck.
And a roof deck on the van?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you have a roof deck on your van? Yeah, hang out.
How big is this thing?
It's like a medium size. It's a smallish van.
It's like not it's an RV, or is it like a
Oh, it's pretty bougie. It's a pretty bougie conversion van. Dude, so I have like a table area that converts into a table and then a kitchen and stuff.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Oh, so this is like a sprinter, like a large sprinter.
Kind of, yeah. Yep. There's the deck.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. I did have some drone work too. If you look at how bougie that is inside there.
Dude, this thing is dope.
Yeah. Lithium battery setup. Yeah. So where was I going with this? Oh, so I started this Instagram account and I wanted to follow running and van conversions.
Okay.
Right. And I'm a pretty serious runner, and I was purposely following like interesting runners that are, usually I like to follow runners that are, middle age, because we're kind of struggling through the same things. And my entire feed was, I felt like a pervert because my entire feed was like young women in skimpy clothing pretending to be runners, or young women in bikinis inside of a van, because that is what the algorithm produces.
Wait, so you weren't even like liking those photographs, but it would just keep feeding it to you?
It just kept feeding those into my algorithm. And so finally I would keep going, I don't want to follow things like this. I don't want to follow things like this. And then after a while, I'm like, I'm just out. I can't, because that's what the algorithm favors. It favors perfectly curated, pretty pictures of pretty people, and that's it.
Well, almost the more insidious piece of this is that these algorithms are getting so good now that you don't have to actually like something. It's now gauging just how much time you're looking at the photograph. So if you're looking at the photograph wondering, why am I seeing this? And you hang on it an additional half second, it feeds you more of this.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it tells them that. So like you don't even have to respond or engage with it. It's just
Yeah. And
yeah,
then I
and
think, I'm lucky enough to have sons, but then I think about the men, like how hard is it for young women to be on Instagram when every single thing they see is perfect women,
yeah, yeah.
right? And
And
nobody's
if you're
perfect, and
if
most of these photos are probably edited in Photoshop before they go up.
well now they have these you've seen Facetune for
Yeah,
photographs,
yeah,
but
yeah.
now
Body
there's
tune.
Facetune for video. Like, have you seen
Ooh,
that?
I need.
There's an ad and I was like, I gotta click this ad because I wanted to
Yeah.
see the comments on it. And there was a
Mhm.
Facetune ad where it showed this girl that had, you know, a textured face due to acne and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then just this swipe and complete transfer. She didn't even look like the same person. And I was like,
Yeah.
dude, people have to be upset about this. And sure enough, I look in the comments and there's just
Yeah.
thousands of people that are just
Yeah.
tearing this thing apart.
Yeah.
But how many millions of people are using it to
Yeah.
you know?
And how and the people that are using it, the algorithm is probably favoring.
For sure, for sure.
Right?
It's
So that
this.
sucks.
You have two boys, right?
Yeah.
See, I have two girls. My oldest girl is 7. My youngest is our newborn, but I'm
Yeah.
terrified.
And it's hard on the boys too, right? The boys are the same thing. Their Instagram feeds are just filled with guys with 8-packs and, perfect chiseled jaws the whole time.
See, I look at that by choice. My partner sometimes wonders, if I'm in the closet, and I'm like, no, I'm not gay.
Yeah.
But she's
I
like,
just want
you
I
look
just
at
want
this.
the abs.
But like I actually like seeing it. Like I'm like that guy's super vascular, and I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with platonic admiration.
Yeah. It's all good. Yeah. And it's tough because, I am a big advocate of health. I think it is very important to be healthy and out exercising and not be overweight. And, that's how you make it to 100. Like you can't make it to 100 if you're 30 pounds overweight. Like it's just not going to
For
happen.
sure.
You're
But
going to die.
neither can you make it to 100 with an 8-pack. See, that's the other piece of the fitness
Correct.
industry that like I don't like is most of the time you see these people that are ripped and just jacked and they're super vascular. And what most of us don't know is that that's actually a very unhealthy state for your body.
Yeah.
And
But
to
it's
get your
bad for your
body to
heart,
look like
right?
that, there's so many things. Like so many of
Yeah.
them are like I've got physical trainers that are just at the gyms that I used to, non-COVID years I used to go to, and they would encourage me to do steroids, and like,
Yeah.
and they'd be like,
You're like, no.
there's nothing wrong with a little bit. And I'm like, I'm not trying to get, because you can use steroids in a relatively safe manner if you use it under guidance, and that's how you can get your body fat down to very low percentages, even in your 40s, right? But it's not healthy to be it's not functional fitness. But
No.
that's the image that we're thinking like,
Yeah.
oh, being fit means that you're jacked. And these guys are filled with so much pre-workout and over-the-counter drugs and not over-the-counter drugs.
Yeah, you don't want that.
No, it's not healthy. You see how many bodybuilders die in their 40s because their bodies are just under too much stress and load, or like they
Yeah.
make it to 50 and they're just completely immobilized.
Mhm. And that is one of the thing with blue zones. It's a slow burn, right?
Yeah.
These people aren't out there exercising every day, but they're just moving all day. They don't sit
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Just piddling around, herding their sheep, cooking in the kitchen,
Yeah.
painting their house.
Yeah. You're not going to have a 6-pack at 90 years old, but you can be functional.
Yeah, yeah. Although, have you seen that one? Did you see that? What is her name? I'll send it to you. This lady she was like 85, I think. She's definitely in her 80s, 70s, 70. I don't know. She was over 75, and she was just kind of your typical kind of like, 75-year-old stay-at-home grandma. Not severely overweight, but had that grandma pudgy belly and stuff. And her daughter is a personal trainer, and was like, "Mom, let me kind of experiment with you." And now she's ripped. She's
Are you
buff.
serious?
Yeah, it's amazing.
That see, I wish there was a way to know. I'm so doubtful of everything that I see these days because it's just like, after have you seen like Icarus and like, the whole Lance Armstrong and the, cycling documentaries? Have you seen all those?
I haven't. No, I haven't seen those. Um,
I mean, Icarus is
yeah,
basically about the Russian doping program and
yeah,
how
yeah.
pervasive it is
And let me
across
say,
Olympics.
this grandma is not like ripped 8-pack ripped. She's just
Yeah.
like she's
Lean.
muscular now.
Yeah. Muscular and
And not super lean. Like
okay.
she's probably like 23, 24 BMI, but just
That is believable
good,
for sure.
good shape. But she's like, she does her pull-ups with the pull-up, with the little helper on the legs and stuff. But she's got definition in her back.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, you can be 80 and have good, still retain muscle, not be like super lean. But
Yeah,
I
you don't
think
want
if
that.
there's this doctor that I saw, like I don't know what his name was, but he has like tons of followers. But he's like 75, 80 years old, and he's just like showing off like his six pack, and he's like, if I can do it, you can do it too. And I'm like, hey doctor, give me some of those roids, and I'll be there when I'm 75 years old.
Okay, I'd like to tell you a story from when I was in the Peace Corps. So I was in the former Soviet Union in this little tiny village of like 9,000 people, and was staying with a host family. And my host father was the PE teacher at the high school. So
Okay,
every once in a while, we would go down to the high school gym and play basketball because he had the keys and stuff. Obviously, do vodka shots in between.
obviously.
Too much. But one day there's this old guy sitting there, and my host dad is like, yeah, he was the old PE teacher at the high
Yeah.
school. And he's like, yeah, he's like 78. And he's like, watch this. And then he says, whatever his name was, do it. And so this guy goes over, he's 78 years old. He just had 3 shots of vodka, goes over to like a pull-up bar,
Mm-hmm.
grabs with one arm, pulls down to a 90 degree, and then
What
lifts
the
his
heck?
legs up to a 90 degree. It's just
That's
like,
wild. That is wild. Wait, so you were in the Peace Corps. Tell me about this. How long was that?
so it's 2 years. Um, that so that taught me a lot. So one of the things that I don't do very often and don't have much time for is complaining about stuff. And that's really
Uh-huh.
what the Peace Corps taught me. Is I was in a village. It was right after the breakup of the Soviet Union, and so
Okay.
like, there were months where there was no toilet paper. They were just things would just disappear. You literally couldn't buy them because of the fracturing of the economy.
Crazy.
And I knew that we would have chicken for dinner when I saw blood in the garden from
Yeah.
the chicken head, and the went to the bathroom in a bucket in the outhouse, showered once a week from a bucket.
What are you doing in the Peace Corps? Like what
So I was teaching English at the high school, and then I also got roped into teaching French because I took French for 3 years in college, and nobody else in the village spoke French. So I
interesting.
got stuck with that.
You speak English,
Um,
French. Okay. How many other languages do you
and then,
speak?
well, so I used to speak French quite well, and then when I was in the Peace Corps, this was in a Romanian-speaking um, part of the Soviet Union, so I was pretty fluent in Romanian. Don't remember much of that, and then I speak Japanese because we lived in Japan for 13
Oh
years.
wow. Okay. That's crazy. So the Peace Corps, what age were you when you were in the Peace Corps?
Right out of college,
Right out of
20,
college.
22, 23. Yeah,
What a crazy experience. I actually
yeah,
went
it was
on
crazy,
a
dude.
2 year I was on a 2 year service mission for my church, which I could see some similarities in like I did kind of like English teaching and service work, but you're
Yeah,
also by and large there to, teach a religion as opposed to
yeah,
just do service work type stuff.
yeah.
What were some of the other things that you were doing other than teaching English? Or is it just primarily focused on teaching English and then just kind of exploring?
Well, so I was a full-time teacher at the high school, just like the
Got it.
local public school.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
What a
so I was
wild
like a
experience.
teacher. That was crazy. Yeah. So such a crazy experience. So for example, like one day I show up, it's 7:30 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the English teachers' daughter had a baby. So they're like, oh, come into the teacher's lounge. Let's celebrate. We did 3 or 4 shots of vodka at like 7:30 in the morning.
Oh man.
And then I go and I've got to teach for a full day.
One shot is enough to make me quite happy.
Yeah. Well, and you're just kind of, you don't know what to do because you're you're the young guy, and B, you're the foreigner. So you kind of have to just kind of go along with whatever's going on. And there's women next to you that are 58 years old they're just doing the same shots as you. So it's not like they're trying to get the foreigner drunk. They're like, hey, we're all in this together.
I mean, you're 20 years old at that time. I don't think I was. I think I was closer to 30 before I had some similar experiences to that. But where did you grow up before that experience? Like, what did you know before that?
So I grew up in very small towns in Oregon, and so I was. And when I was younger, I read a lot of books too. Like when I graduated high school, it was like, I want the F out of small towns. I am done with this. Like I want out. And so between my junior and senior year of college, I took a term off and saved money and went and traveled all around Europe and got hooked to traveling, and then joined the Peace Corps and then went in. But that was the first time I'd ever been, like people were poor. Like it was poverty.
Yeah. So what was it like to be able to see that poverty? Because that's go from conveniences of, what we have to like basically nothing.
Yeah. And I guess poverty is not the correct term. Like everybody had a house, like an actual house with heat and, a kitchen and like, so not like abject poverty that you maybe would imagine in like, some war-torn African country or something like that. But, everybody had a house, but the economy had just been pulled out of the rug from people. So, I remember, everybody used natural gas for their kitchen stoves, and you would have like a little propane tank that would be outside the house that was plumbed into the house. But there was a big shortage. And so I remember, we ran out of propane. And so, the family was like, just cooking outside with wood or whatever, which wasn't really readily available. I mean, imagine what would happen if you had to just cook outside with wood right now.
Yeah, no,
at your house. Like you're like, okay, I got to figure this out. And I remember, a couple nights of just like somebody would say, hey, so-and-so has some gas. And so we would get a hand truck and we would walk all the way across the village to buy some propane.
That's crazy.
And walk it all the way back.
Yeah, these basic infrastructural kind of things that we have that we overlook. I feel like so much of the problems that I see in terms of white privilege, wealthy privilege, every form of privilege that we each get to participate in is simply because we don't get a chance to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, to see a different perspective on life. Mm-hmm. I wish I grew up in Utah, and for most people in Utah, for most Mormons in Utah, their only experience going outside of the state was their mission, their 2 years of service work, and many of them didn't go. So many of them kind of just stay localized, and many of the ones that go, they kind of stay stateside, or maybe they don't go and see those things. And then there are a lot that do see the different sides of the world, and you can always tell. You can tell by the level of empathy that somebody has based on just, that they've been to many different places and that they've seen a lot of different things based on their empathy and the way that they behave and respond to different things around them. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a couple things that definitely that sense of empathy for people, but then also knowing that basically it's our job to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to come and fix the problem for you in Moldova. Like, you got to figure out how to fix the problem. And a lot of times it's working together to get that problem fixed.
Yeah.
And so the sense of empathy, but then also the sense of like, hey, if you have empathy for someone's like, hey, I'm going to help you fix the problem, but you got to meet me halfway. We got to do this together.
Yeah.
You can't go and fix somebody's problem for them. And then the other thing, which I mentioned before, is just the not complaining about things. Like once you've gone to the bathroom in a bucket for a year, little modern inconveniences don't really get me upset about anything.
Yeah. It's
People complain about this and that. I'm like, it's better than pooping in a bucket for a year.
different level of gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to think back, and I actually do recall I did have some of those experiences in my earlier 20s. When I came back, I got married very young to my now ex-wife. We were 20. I was 22 at the time. She was 25. But before we got married, we went to China and we visited the village where her grandparents grew up. Mm-hmm. And I'd never seen anything like it. Like it was so unusual because you could drive. China is a very interesting place where you can have just complete wealth and walk 5 to 10 minutes and feel that you're in a third world country. Like you could, it's that, like very, I don't know what the right term for it is. I've never seen anything like it.
So like Los Angeles now.
Yeah, actually. Yes. That is actually a very good analogy because now that I'm thinking about it, Skid Row is like literally right next to the financial district and every other thing.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. But for me, Oregon was the same, even rural Oregon. Like that's not how Utah was when you were growing up, and that's not how Oregon was when I grew up. So that delineation from a short physical presence is really jarring.
Yeah. And even, rural areas of the States, you still have modern conveniences. But in China, we went to the village, it was, pooping in a gutter. It was, you're going, the bathrooms are just a hole in the bathroom that you have to, like you said, you poop in the hole and you flush it with a bucket of water that you fill up yourself and you
Not
shower with a bucket.
Refrigeration.
Yeah.
Just your regular conveniences. And I think, so I have a question. So one of the things that, and I've been in situations like that is quite jarring is, when you're there is not only that jarringness, but the fact that it doesn't shock people there. Like everybody's numb to that difference. But I think that with the fracturing of our own society and big homeless problems we're having or drug problems, that we see that more often than not, it's just a self-defense mechanism to, like, you just can't physically be shocked every single day as you walk around. Like eventually you unfortunately get used to it.
Yeah, there is that side of it too. I think we're both perspectives, like I remember my mother-in-law was very grateful, like she was very used to going back to the village and living in the village life, but she was also very grateful for what she had and her city home and everything like that. And then there are the more hardened people that like, they're usually the ones that just don't want to worry about it. Like you see so much poverty, you see so much everything, but they're usually the more privileged ones that had a chance to grow up in the city. And while they see all the other stuff, there's just too many people to worry about it. So they just kind of dismiss it and ignore it.
Yeah.
Those were usually the ones that didn't experience it though.
Yeah. And I think it's also important that we make the point that, a poor village in China or Moldova is not the same as a homeless encampment, right? Because
correct.
When, if you take, your ex-mother-in-law going back, there are many benefits of living in that type of situation. Like when I was in Moldova, every single week, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, friends or relatives would come over with guitars and we would sit around and eat dinner and sing and talk and stuff, which, never happens here.
No. I would 1000% take living in a small village over a homeless encampment. Those two things are not comparable, because
Yeah.
a village will have its culture, its communal, aspects of it, its own infrastructure, even though it's
Yeah.
not the infrastructure you're used to.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Homeless
there is
villages do not.
infrastructure. It's just not electric and plumbing sometimes.
Yes, yes. So those two things to like are not comparable for sure.
Yeah.
But at
Yeah.
the same time, LA's growing. I don't know if you've been here recently, man, but in 2020, it's wild. Like we went
Yeah.
to
Well, Portland's out of hand too.
Is
I
it?
mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's just
Yeah,
there's a whole city block across the street from the university that is just there's like kitchen areas set up and stuff on the sidewalk, and there used to be a business on the corner that is now closed. I don't know if it was closed because of COVID or closed because nobody wants to go there because they don't want to wade through the homeless encampment.
yeah. It's in LA County specifically over here. It's getting pervasive. Like we went to, normally we would do photo shoots and educational productions in Venice, and it's been a while since I've been in Venice. So like maybe a month and a half ago, we're like, hey, let's go up to Venice. Like we haven't been there for a while. Let's go and do some education outside. And I've never seen anything like it. Like miles of just homeless encampments everywhere you go. Like the actual Venice beach walk is now just littered with garbage and with homeless people, and it's incredibly unfortunate. At the same time, like there is not really anything at least not that I know of that a general citizen can do. This has to come from like government infrastructure to be able to make a change like this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's a very difficult problem to solve because it requires a lot of effort on society and government to create an infrastructure to get people off of the streets, and obviously a large amount of financial resources. But then it also takes the willingness of the people who are homeless to move out of home, which is very hard, especially if you're dealing
definitely.
with, addiction or emotional
Mental health
traumas.
issues.
A lot of people are, serious emotional traumas, physical traumas from the past, mental health, all of these things. But you can't make someone not homeless and a functioning part of society for them.
For sure.
You can help them and assist. So it's a very difficult problem to solve.
Well, especially during a pandemic where
Yeah.
I have to imagine that, it's the fact that now the shelters, how many people can you fit into a shelter safely when there's a pandemic going on and all these other issues that are occurring. But what's
And is it
wacky,
safe? Is it safe for the people running the shelter? Or is it safe for
exactly.
anybody? Like, if I was homeless, you couldn't pay me enough to go into a shelter.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are you kidding me? That's the danger spot.
Yeah.
Outside in the fresh air is safety.
I'll take my tent and my own little space any day over that.
I was actually just talking to a friend. He's like, he's like, why hasn't COVID ravaged the homeless population in Portland? And I'm like, well, they're in the safest spot there is. They're outside in fresh air.
Yeah, that's true.
Transmission
rates among outside is pretty negligible.
Yeah. In a home with other people, that's more dangerous.
Yeah, and while all this is going on, it's just to talk about like economics for a second. My background is, I came from a business degree and a CPA background, so I always have my eye on the economy, and it's just wild to see California taxes are insane. They're through the roof, and yet our homeless problem and loss of jobs and everything that we're dealing with is just nuts. And we're a massive part of the U.S. economy, and so is New York, which is also ravaged. And yet the stock market is going up as if it's just ignoring every bit of rationale. Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, and I know it probably makes no sense to most people, but I keep hearing these explanations of like, the market is future thinking. And I'm like, how far forward are they thinking? Like, how far are they going into the future? Like, are they 30 years into the future? Like, I don't.
Because at max, I'm 2. That's as far as I can go.
It blows me away that there's record numbers on every one of these companies.
Well, And I think also we see how a lot of these large companies aren't affected by the main street economy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
It's true.
you know,
It is very true.
yeah, all the everybody. So I don't know, and that's because I really I thought we were going to be dealing with another 2008, 2009 housing crash.
I still feel like we are in for a major correction. And if we're
It,
not, there's major inflation on the horizon. It has
yeah,
to be one or the
I
other.
don't know I don't know what's going to happen. It's been weird. Although, yeah, I don't know. Although those unemployment stimulus checks for the people that were getting them helped a lot
For sure.
to keep that crash at bay. Because a lot, like here in Oregon, a lot of people, they were getting 20, what was that? What's six times four? That's 2,400 from the federal government plus, 900 from the state government. And so, you know, they were getting by on, a little over $3,000. Some people are making more money not working than
No,
working. So, and I
we
think,
saw the same issue.
yeah, I mean, I think that it really did its job to keep the economy from crashing. Because if that didn't happen, I really think it would have been really, really bad.
For
So,
sure.
and I wonder. So I think that the government's plan actually kind of worked, and it did what it said it was supposed to do. So, hopefully that will help us carry through. And I don't know. Some days I wake up and I'm like, oh man, the whole thing's going to crash. And then some days I guess I'm like, well, guess not.
Yeah, it's definitely wild. Having built your business, I don't know if I've ever asked you this kind of. I'm curious myself. You built your business off of the last recession. What was the impetus for starting Fundy Software?
So I was shooting weddings in Japan.
Okay.
And wedding in Japan are very quick turnaround. Like they're 4.5 hours, boom, boom, boom. Sometimes you'll have 3 weddings on a weekend. Sometimes you'll have 4. You'll have a morning and afternoon
You could
wedding
actually
at
do
the
it.
same location.
Oh wow, you could do 2 in a day. Okay.
Oh, it's like freaking military. They've got an MC that basically follows the bride and groom. Okay, now's time when you're gonna do this. Now it's time to go talk to your friends. Now it's time to go light the candle, and then okay, now it's time to tell everybody to leave.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and they're on a microphone. It's like, okay, here now it's to send off the bride and groom. All right, see you later. Boom. So it's a whole system, man. It's like clockwork.
Just churning them out.
But because of that, this was at the very advent of digital. I was shooting with a Fuji S5. I don't know if you remember that camera.
That was before my time.
And so I was having to turn around albums really quickly. And I just fell in love with albums, and albums were included in every one of my packages. And so I was having to turn them around a lot. And there was just, you're either dealing with template-based software that had, the design you liked had, 3 horizontals and 4 verticals, but you had 3 verticals and 4 horizontals and didn't fit together. So you would be like, okay, I'm just going to use the templates because it's fast. And then you're like, well, this sucks. So then you'd use Photoshop because you could do it to what you want, but it would take forever. And I'd always been really good at math. And I was like, well, I just kind of like, I think instead of a design problem, I think this is just a math problem. Like I want to fit X number of images in this rectangular box and have the edges line up. And paid a Russian developer to write some Photoshop scripts for me, and launched version 1. And it sucked, but it was slightly interesting, and it paid enough I made enough money to make version 2.
So version 1 was just a Photoshop plugin.
Version 1 was not even a Photoshop plugin. It was just actions and scripts that you had to like manually click on or install. Yeah. And then it wasn't until version 3 until I actually had like a panel with a UI.
So version 3 was the plugin.
Yeah. Version 3 was
And
the Photoshop. 3, 4, and 5
how
were Photoshop plugins, and then 6 is when we went to a full desktop environment.
how many years were you before it became a plugin versus just an action?
2 years.
2 years.
Maybe?
But for those
Yeah.
2 years, you were selling, you were building a customer base.
Yeah. Yeah. Had no idea what I was doing. I'd never, I was an English teacher before. I'd never run an online business. Didn't know anything about email marketing. Didn't know anything about online advertising. Just didn't know anything.
But that's the beautiful part about it, because I feel like that, one of my next books right now, it's Stupid Simple Relationships, but I really want to write a book on stupid simple entrepreneurialism, or just building a business, right? Stupid simple business. And one of the principles I keep finding in every single person is just starting with something. To give people an idea, a Photoshop action is literally just a series of steps that anybody can create inside of Photoshop. This is not even not even a piece of software at that point, but it gave you enough as a proof of concept to start selling.
Yeah,
it's not where you want to go.
And I paid a developer $2,000 to write a couple scripts that did some of the complex math to create the mask, the layer masks on the fly to put the photos in.
So version 3,
my initial investment was $2,000.
And how many times, I feel like too often we have an idea and we just procrastinate. We wait for it to be perfect. We want to figure out every problem. We want to have the perfect plan. It just doesn't exist. And this is yet another, I think I've uncovered 20 of these examples at this point, but yours is another example of this.
So, I kind of, so as I told you before, I did a running coaching certificate program.
Yeah.
With Roadrunners Club of America, which is 100 years old or whatever. But and it was really good. But we have these instructors, and one of the instructors taught business and entrepreneurialism at a college.
Mm-hmm.
But listening to him, I could tell he had never actually run a business himself, because he's
Isn't
like,
that
"Oh, you got to make a business plan and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Well, actually," and quiz, I don't know anybody who has ever created a business that a true entrepreneur, right? They didn't get some money from their dad and blah, blah, blah. But somebody just kind of created something from nothing that makes over 7 figures a year that started with a business plan. I don't know one single person.
Interesting.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, I do know a few that start with business plans, and we ourselves
it's
I should
different
say
if they're a business that are seeking investment to then start a business. But somebody that just started something organically and just grew it, that
Correct.
Day one, when they started, did they have a business plan outside of maybe some scribbling on a piece of paper?
Usually not. And even today, since our first venture, Justin, Chris, and I would generally write a business plan with each of the things that we do, but it's not what they teach you in school. In school, you're going to spend a year, developing this business plan and this idea. What we develop before we launch something takes us a couple days. It's just here's a rough idea of what we want to do. Here are the possible pivots. Here are the things here's how we're going to monetize. This is the plan. Let's go.
Yep.
And then you are literally crafting it as you go along, because so many of the things in an initial business plan, they just evolve. What you usually jump into in business, you have to pivot multiple times before you find the actual thing that you do. Yeah. So unless you're going for funding, and those were the examples that I was thinking in my head, every time we had to go for funding, you have to have something pretty well.
Yeah. And I don't count those.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people that just organically grew they just kind of fed the business from their own.
Correct. I feel like a lot of people would be served by, maybe we need to do a 48-hour business plan course, I know too many people that jump into it. 3 hours.
But here's the key. Here's the key, though, is that you create something that you can sell, figure out how you're going to get the word out to people and figure out who's going to buy it. And then you do it. And if nobody's buying the thing, then something's wrong.
Don't you feel like there's so many people that there's a lot of, people that want to create a business that they're solving needs that don't exist. And I feel like if they were to sit down and to actually spend a few hours just thinking through the idea, visualizing it, they could save themselves a lot of effort. That's kind of what I'm thinking in my head is like there's just so many non-ideas that are like
Yeah.
like I remember I read one case study of a dude that had this crazy contraption. It was like this laser built device for detecting when you had driven your car into your garage far enough without hitting something, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to solve this huge problem and we're going to have a laser sensor device and all this. And someone else posed the question of like, what's wrong with like the string in the tennis ball? The string in the tennis ball that we all hang from the garage that just bumps into the glass and tells you when you're there. And he's like, this is going to be so much better. And that person spent, I can't imagine how much money like going into production and investing this whole thing. And people are like,
hundreds of $1,000.
We
solved the problem
figured
already.
out. We got this.
Everybody's got some string in an old tennis ball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like.
Pay $30 for a string in a tennis ball.
Yeah.
For a new tennis ball.
I heard of there was one photographer that came to me quite a while ago and said to me, I'm gonna sell a product that is, and it wasn't tintype. It was like a different type of like old school format photography.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm gonna charge $3,000 because per portrait because I'm the only person that can deliver a true, this archival experience of sitting in front of an old camera and going and creating this. And I'm like, bro, have you asked any of your friends if they would pay $3,000 for that? Like maybe you should go and ask a few people and see, because you're creating a product for a need that does not truly exist. And maybe you could find 100 people in all the United States that would be like, I will pay for that. How are you going to find those 100 people?
Yeah.
So that's where I feel like let's go with your 3-hour model. The 3-hour business plan would prevent that.
Well, and I think it's key to think it all the way through, right?
Yes.
Is it solving a problem? Will people give me money for this?
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I do know that you have felt this. Not so much maybe early on, but a lot of times people will latch onto an idea because it starts to work, but it really doesn't fit with who they are personally. Like they might be able to take a good photograph, but they realize that they hate the business of photography. But they fall into it, and they start doing it before, which can easily be solved by just visualizing, what is this going to be like as a job versus a hobby type thing.
Sorry,
but I guess my
trying to get this light off of me.
You're good.
Like
I like that stripe. I like the stripe. You can.
It's the sun is coming in right behind. That's a little bit better. The sun is coming down, and it's like right between the blinds.
You're good, brother. I have kind of one last thing that I wanted to ask you. I know that you're a person that is always kind of pushing forward and thinking of new things.
Yeah.
I'm curious now. You've had a good amount of time with Fundy Software, and it's an incredibly successful company. Tons of users, something I highly would recommend checking out if you're a photographer. And anyway, everybody knows that I'm a huge advocate, but I'm also curious, what's on the horizon for you? Like what's getting you excited these days?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in some sense, I'm a victim of my own goals in that the software company is really running itself these days.
Yeah.
Like
it's a great thing.
I attend the weekly meetings and I put pressure where it needs to be put. And, I kind of manage the dev team and chart out those directions, but I have a lot of free time these days. And so right now I'm really kind of trying to figure out what that is. I really want to be in more daily contact with people.
Yeah.
which COVID has put a wrench in. But I really want to focus on many of the things that we've discussed is trying to help people create a holistically successful life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't know what that means. And I don't know, is that a product? Is that, what is that for people? But I see a lot of people whose lives are just out of balance.
Yeah.
And maybe they're very financially successful, but their physical health is horrible, or their emotional health, or their family situation. And oftentimes, apropos the name of this podcast is that it's really just coming back and focusing on those simple things and putting those pressure on those simple few things that truly bring happiness and success, and kind of getting off that hamster wheel.
That's literally why I'm here, my friend. But there's so many potential ways that you can do that. Like, you could do that through your running podcast. You can do that through, books. You could do that. Are there any particular avenues that are you exploring? Or are there certain avenues that you're like, I want to lean into at this point?
I'm not quite there. So I'm, the podcast is fun and it's great because there's no pressure. We're not selling anything. We're just talking. If you want to listen to two guys cussing a lot talking about running, then we are your guys. And if you don't want to listen to that, then we're not. No harm, no foul. But I don't know how I want to do this, but there is a great effect on your personal and professional well-being by setting, we all see this in business. We set goals for ourselves, we achieve our goals, and we feel good about ourselves, and we keep moving forward. But there's something that is different when, and you probably experience this in cycling, when you push your body further than you thought was possible. And you gain something that cannot be gained by there's no hack.
Yeah.
Right? There's no cheat. There's no hack. You just got to put in the time. And
you level up.
And for me, running is kind of a metaphor for other successes. You got to run the long distance. It's the long haul.
Yeah.
Right? You can't burn out in the first mile, or you're not going to make it to mile 13 or mile 26. So, and it's, same thing, we can't be in for the short, quick gratification of the tater tots and the, cheesecake every day. Sure. Maybe once in a while, but it's that slow burn in life and in business that eventually brings you the success where you can step back from your business and your business can continue to run itself, or you can go, eat a bad meal, but because you're so healthy, you can burn through that. Or, one of the things that I've been studying is the mental benefits of long distance endurance sports is that it actually rewires your brain. So you kind of build this cushion where when something bad happens, or you have a bad day, or something depressing happens, your brain can bounce back faster. It builds this kind of mental cushion around itself. And so how can viewing a holistic vantage point of our life as a long distance event and this slow burn to create a more fulfilling, more relaxing, happier life and more profitable business?
I love all of that. I'm excited that you have the time to explore this, because I know that you are a very curious person and kind of a natural problem solver. So I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm glad that you have you've built up a system that has given you the luxury at this point to be able to kind of explore the next thing. And it's always interesting because the goal, the natural route of entrepreneurship is kind of that route where you kind of solve a problem. Eventually you build the business. If it's successful, you build the business to the point where it no longer needs you, and then you look to the next problem to solve. Yeah. So I'm excited to whatever you move on to, man. I feel like you have tons of wisdom and experiences to share with people. Just how you want to share it.
We'll find out. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now I just want to get that vaccine and go drink some beer with some buddies. That's priority number one.
This is everybody's 2021 goals.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Andrew, dude, I appreciate you coming on here. Thank you, Fundy, for being here. I wanted to, for all those that are, yes, for those that are listening, if you are a photographer, if you do portraits, you have to check out Fundy Software, check out Fundy Album Designer, and the wall art software that's built into it. That is a must. We're going to link up everything. Is there anything else other than, also the running podcast? We will also link up in the show notes.
Oh, thanks.
Anything else that we can kind of let people know about at this point?
I don't. So one thing to put in might be interesting. We talked about print and the meaning of print, and I think it's going to become even more important is the powerofprintfilm.com, the documentary I made traveling back to France to recreate a 100-year-old portrait.
Man, we didn't even get to talk about that story, but that's
totally forgot about it. It's what happens when you get old. You do too much stuff, you forget about things.
No, it just means that we need another one of these conversations. So, my friend, I would like to extend an invite now. At any point in the next few months when you feel like coming back, just give me a holler and let's have another conversation.
Man. That'd be a lot of fun.
All right, brother. Thanks.
Let's get you running, then you can come on the running podcast.
I'll let you know how it goes.
Alrighty.
All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Talk to you later.